Hi, this is Yaffi Lvova, registered dietitian nutritionist with Baby Bloom Nutrition, and welcome to Nap Time Nutrition. Today we'll be talking about vitamin D. Vitamin D is a really popular supplement people are taking. It's a big topic of conversation with health, with immunity, with mood control. So let's talk about what it is, how to get it, how much do you need the supplement or no? And those are all really complicated questions. So first, vitamin D comes in different forms. The active form in your body is D3, and you can buy that as a supplement, or I'll talk about how your body can make that. The general gist of this talk is that your dosage and what you need of vitamin D depends on your serum levels. It depends on what's going on in your body. And when someone tells you you need this much vitamin D or that much, it really depends on what's going on in your body already. And that has to do with a lot of factors. A lot of people really are vitamin D deficient. And I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of deficiency levels. I'm not surprised to see a lot of deficiency levels when people come to me. But you don't know what your levels are. And the amount of dosage that you need as far as a vitamin D supplement is very dependent on where you're starting. So you have to listen to your doctor, listen to your dietitian, listen to a professional who has seen your blood results before determining if you should be supplementing and how much. So foods, vitamin D comes in some foods. It's fairly limited though. Milk, fish, specifically fish oil, beef liver, egg yolks, fortified products. It comes in, for instance, there's fortified orange juice that has vitamin D, and also enhanced mushrooms. And that's a really fun one. It was fairly recently discovered that a certain variety of mushrooms left out in the sun would produce a certain type of vitamin D, which it really fascinates me. So that's your major vegan source right there. So what does vitamin D do in your body? It's known for strong bones. It acts with calcium, and I'm going to get further into that as far as why you shouldn't micromanage your nutrients and how micronutrients work together. Vitamin D protects you from heart disease. It protects you from mental deterioration as you get older. Protects kids from asthma. It has protection against cancer, certain types of cancer. It helps with mood, prevents against diabetes, hypertension, which is high blood pressure. It also helps with MS, or it has a lot to do with MS because it is an anti-inflammatory agent, and it boosts your immunity. So there's a whole lot going on with it, a whole lot of reasons why you want a vitamin D level to be adequate. So let's talk about what adequate means. Well, people throw around numbers, but it's really important with vitamin D to talk about what your units are. And what do I mean by that? Well, vitamin D is measured in two different ways: nanomoles per liter and nanograms per milliliter. And the numbers are fairly similar. They're close enough that you could really get confused. So if someone says they have a vitamin D level of 12, what's the unit of measurement? It's really important to look at that. If you're looking at nanograms per milliliter, 12 is deficient. Actually, in both of them, 12 would be deficient. What you want to look for is an over 50 level if you're looking at nanomoles per liter, and over 20 if you're looking at nanograms per milliliter. And I posted an article that has a whole chart about the breakdown, and I'm not just going to rattle it off because it won't, it'll get kind of boring. So look at the article I posted. It shows in both major measurements, and you can look at where you are and where maybe you should be and how to get there. So as I said, your dose, if you're going to supplement, depends on that level. So as far as the amount in food that you'll find, can you get enough vitamin D from food? Well, wild salmon in 3.5 ounces is going to have between 600 and 1,000 IUs per day, per serving of 3.5 ounces. The recommendations currently, which asterisk, they are low. These recommendations are being reevaluated because they are very low. But the current recommendation, just to give you some kind of reference, is 200 IU per day if you're under 50. Between 50 and 70 years of age, 400 IU per day. And if you're over 70, you're looking at about 600 IU per day. So with those recommendations, which are the current recommendations, a serving of wild salmon would definitely meet your needs. Just so you get an idea of other types of sources, tuna fish 3.6 ounces has 230 IUs, which does not meet your needs for the day, but you would get it from other sources as well. Milk has 100 IU, and fortified orange juice has about the same. So you would really need to get it from a number of different sources if you're relying on food in general for your vitamin D. Supplements, it really depends on what your doctor is going to prescribe. Between 300 and 50,000 IU per day. And that's why you really want to follow a professional's advice, because that is a huge difference between 300 and 50,000 IU per day. Very big difference. You don't want to overdo it and you don't want to undercut yourself. You really want to know where you stand in order to determine where you should be as far as vitamin D supplementation. So how about the sun? The sun is the other major way that we get vitamin D. When you go outside with no protection on, and that's a really big thing, without sunscreen, exposure to your hands, your arms, and your face, the recommendation is 10 to 15 minutes, 2 to 3 times per week. And if you're a fair-skinned person living in the lower half of the country, and I'll get into why, the UV rays from the sun will interact with your skin in order to give you a dose of 10,000 IU per session. So 15 minutes in the sun is going to give you 10 times the amount of vitamin D that a serving of wild salmon will give you, and wild salmon is the #1 vitamin D source. So it's really important to know where you stand with that. And so let's talk about how you're affected by the sun. I mentioned that in the lower half of the country, you're going to get more sun exposure because in the upper half, you have more rain, you have more cloud coverage, you don't have the same type of UV exposure. If you have darker skin, you're going to have trouble producing vitamin D just because your skin will protect you from cancer by being darker, but at the same time, it's not going to produce vitamin D in quite the same way. Other factors are if you don't have a lot of sun exposure. If you live in Arizona, for example, we have very low vitamin D levels here because we have a lot of sun exposure. It's fantastic sun exposure, and we like to stay inside to hide from it. So you really need to take that into account as well. If you have a low consumption of vitamin D foods, if you have kidney or liver problems, you might have to look at your vitamin D levels and adjust because the vitamin D that we get either from food or from the sun has to ping pong around our body before turning into activated D3. It hits the liver. Did I get that wrong? It hits the liver, right, and then the kidneys, and then it turns into activated D3 in the kidneys, and that's where your body can really use it. So if you have problems with your liver or with your kidneys, then you might have problems converting vitamin D into the activated form. If you have some problems with your gastrointestinal tract, for instance, cystic fibrosis or irritable bowel syndrome such as Crohn's or even IBS, if you have any kind of inflammation going on in your GI tract, if you have had a gastric bypass, you may need to really think about you need to talk to your doctor about supplementation because vitamin D is absorbed in the duodenum, which is the section of the small intestine that's right after the stomach. And in a classic gastric bypass, you're bypassing that duodenum. So your body no longer has access to the micronutrients that would be absorbed through that part of the small intestine. And ideally, as time goes on, your body makes up for that and it starts to absorb it in other ways. But it's very important to have an open dialogue with your doctor and maintain your blood work to make sure that you're staying on target. And vitamin D is definitely not the only micronutrient affected in that way. Also, if you're in a larger body, you could have a problem with absorption. You may need to have a higher dosage than someone who's in a smaller body in order to make sure that your body is effectively absorbing vitamin D. So the danger of isolating micronutrients. I did an Naptime Nutrition specifically on micronutrients and micromanaging micronutrients. If you say vitamin D is good for you, I'm going to take a ton of it, but you ignore calcium, then it's not going to work for you the same way. They are a tag team. They need each other in order to really work in the body. So it's important to have an open dialogue again with your doctor, with your dietitian, in order to make sure that you're supplementing appropriately. We are meant to get our nutrition from the sun and from food, and we're supposed to be able to get all of our nutrition that way. And supplementation really throws that off by isolating different micronutrients. And it's not ideal, to take pills as your nutrition. This is really just in order to supplement what else you have going on, in order to cover for your lifestyle or nutrition deficiencies or what have you. So it's very important to stay on top of that, get your blood work done, look at your vitamin D level, and determine with your healthcare professional what an appropriate dosage of vitamin D is, and go from there. So that is your nap time nutrition on vitamin D. Please feel free to ask any questions, and I don't have a topic picked out for next week, but I will be here, right here, although hopefully in my usual spot because my kids will be back at school. And 1 o'clock Arizona time, 3 p.m. East Coast time, and I think it's 12 o'clock in California and the West Coast. So if you're local to the Phoenix area, come to Toddler Test Kitchen. We're starting up again with some really fun new recipes at the Hallie Hart Children's Museum in Tempe. And I am also starting a family meal planning boot camp. And if you want more information on that, PM me or sign up for my newsletter. You can follow me on Facebook, Pinterest, or Instagram. And I do personal and small group nutrition counseling for pregnancy, early parenthood, early childhood, any of those obstacles that come in that section of life, of which there are many possible obstacles. So follow me, message me, share if this was helpful to you, and I'll see you next week. Thanks.